Right, so we'll make a start. We've got 16 logged on at the moment, so others will undoubtedly join us. So good afternoon all. Thank you for joining us for this talk entitled Pro Bono, the gift that keeps on giving, as part of the 20th anniversary celebrations of Pro Bono Week. So firstly, to introduce myself, my name is Lee Royal. I'm a senior clerk at Spy Barristers in Leeds. In addition to this, I'm the clerking representative on the Pro Bono and Social Responsibility Committee at the Bar Council. I'm also a member of the Marketing Advisory Group at Advocate, and finally, if that wasn't enough, a member of the Management Committee of the IBC. With me making up this auspicious panel we've got this evening, I have with me Nick Levitt, Practice Director at Outer Temple Chambers, Sophie Floyd, who's a clerk at Blackstone Chambers, and if we've got any difficult questions to answer at the Q&A at the end, we have hopefully online Lucy Barber, who's the Joint Senior Clerk at 11 KBW, and Lucy is also the Chair of the Institute of Barristers Clerks. So if I can hand over to Nick first to kick things off for us.
Absolutely, thank you Lee, and thank you to Advocate as well for inviting me to speak to this panel. It's my committee appointments pale in comparison to Lee's, but I was the grateful recipient of the Chambers Professional of the Year last year's Pro Bono Awards, and part of that stems from my work with Bryony and others at Advocate in servicing their work through our Temple Chambers, where I am. Our members are very passionate about Pro Bono, and that all started probably about 10 years ago. I've been with Chambers for perhaps 15 years now, and about 10 years ago, because of social responsibility, of course, that's obvious. You know, so many of our chambers and our members are in fortunate positions so that they should give back to those less fortunate in society, but also because of practice development as well. That was a massive part of our wanting to do more too. Reasons being, I wanted to get into appellate courts for getting references, for getting experience beyond what they were already getting, and much more. So there were so many different ways in which we did that. There was Advocate were the key one. They were, and to this day remain the main one, but there are so many other options out there for accepting pro bono work, be that through, I'm going to name a few, there are others available. Clerks, Chancery Litigants in Person scheme, that is, if your members want to get involved in applications before the judges in the applications list in the Chancery Division. ELIPS, which is the Employment Litigant in Person scheme for employment tribunal work. The Coram Children's Legal Centre for education matters. Protect, if your members have interest in employment whistleblowing cases. And the Financial Services Lawyers Association as well, with who we do quite a lot of regulatory disciplinary committee work with the Financial Conduct Authority. So there are others available, as I say. On to what it means for individual barristers' practice. I find that, as I touched on before, it provides them with the opportunities and experiences that they might not otherwise get through conventional methods, be it through a solicitor or otherwise. It might be they're too junior to be instructed on that court of appeal case, or maybe their profile doesn't fit for what a solicitor might be looking for. But through Advocates, there is no real necessity to have that experience. If you're a volunteer and you put yourself forward and you accept the case, you can do that case. And I've had examples of members who want to diversify their practice into private client work, taking on cases that have gone to 3-week hearings in the Chancery Division, and they've been absolutely massive for their long-term development. And that's just one example. It provides them opportunities to get before new clients, potentially, be it by being against them or even with them, because there are opportunities where if you accept a pro bono case, and very much through Advocates, it would almost be like a direct access case. There is no solicitor there, which, as a clerk, can present a few problems. We know that if you've done a few direct access cases in the past, but there is, not all of them like that, of course not. But there's an organisation called Pro Bono Connect, which Jamie Goldsmith QC advisors called set up some years ago, and there are panel chambers and panel solicitors, and some real heavy hitting solicitors firms are on there as well. If you've got a particular case which you feel benefit from the existence of a solicitor, you can approach Pro Bono Connect. They will put the feelers out there to try and engage one of the panel solicitors, and you can then team up with them. And I've had examples where we've done cases with Baker McKenzie, Gates, and many of whom we've kept in contact with since, and have since had paid work from them. So another real positive for an individual's practice. And obviously, sense of achievement. I mean, juniors, for example, they could all, I'm sure we've got juniors in chambers who've got off onto comment or are doing disclosure exercises in which they're earning pretty good money, but no one's really patting them on the back for doing disclosure. If you do a worthwhile pro bono case, get that result, or maybe even not get that result, just put in the effort and make that client feel as though they've been well served by a barrister. You can ride on the back of their shoulders out of court, and get that sort of real warm, fuzzy feeling that you won't get from sitting in a dark room working through bundles and bundles of paper. But so individual practices, that's what I'd say about those. Career progression generally, those opportunities to appear in high-profile cases, which then go on to a barrister's profile. You get a barrister's profile, sometimes, again, use the disclosure example, you're not going to put that on your profile. If you get involved in a court of appeal case or appellate trial case, do a decent advice work on an interesting point, you put that on your profile, and that will look good to anyone who wants to instruct you in future. That's one plus. Also, for career progression, you want to get involved in government work, you want to get yourself on a panel. They're ideal cases, a lot of them, to put on a reference, because your client handling with that sort of direct access element, other witnesses and things like that. So government panel applications, EHRC, Equality and Human Rights Commission applications, and QC applications even. I have examples of members who have used pro bono cases on their QC applications to great effect. So another example there. And again, touching on the example where, for example, you're in a tax set, but you want to do more, call it an employment case. Your clerk isn't, as a barrister, if you're the barrister, your clerk's not going to get that call from the client saying, who have you got for this employment case? It's just not really going to happen at tax set normally. So there's opportunities there for that barrister to go and do a case which they might have interest in. So a couple of snippets there on that. And for chambers as a whole, how to sell it within chambers, well, it's not going to be for everyone. Some barristers I know are just not going to be receptive to it, but so many will be, and get them in it from an early start. Sell the previous examples. I use examples of members in years gone by who have successfully applied for panel off the back of them, with silk and whatever. I use so many examples of, well, they've done it. It looks so good on your profile. It enables me to sell you easier. It enables you to walk into a room with a load of people and be able to talk about your experience on this case before this judge, acting for this client. Solicitors love barristers who do pro bono work, it makes them look at the world better. So it shows also, and this again, the obvious one, is chambers socially responsible of chambers to do pro bono work. That's really one of the key areas. Good for branding as well, and all the big firms out there undertaking, you see Clifford Chance and others who have actually got dedicated pro bono teams pro bono solicitors. So it's not, it's for everyone. Everyone is doing it, and so should we all. In terms of selling it, more so, get your members involved as well. I tend to have members, don't just have it coming from you, but get those who are experienced delivering seminars in chambers about the positive impacts of it within chambers and outside. And those would be that would be what I have to say. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Could we hand over to Sophie?
Of course. Thank you. So firstly, apologies. I'm sure there is going to be some overlap because, approaching pro bono work and case management generally as a chambers is obviously going to be similar. But today I thought I would just touch base on sort of Blackstone and how we benefit from pro bono work and manage casework ourselves in chambers. But before I move on to advocate, which I'm going to sort of home in on today, I just thought I'd mention there's obviously a massive sort of variety of pro bono work available, and you can get involved in it through sort of charities or through sort of non-governmental organisations like the Public Law Project or Justice, and obviously that has got equal weight. But today, just on sort of the claimant-based work, and particularly through the opportunities Advocate provide, I was just going to touch on sort of practice, career generally, and also sort of arguably the most important thing for us all is how to sell that kind of work in. So, I mean, firstly, I think Advocate's work and the cases that they have got available are fantastic at sort of branching out your practice areas at every level. At sort of the junior level, we can look at cases for sort of our new tenants, sort of practice areas. They might be sort of number 4 of a team of barristers, got a QC in chambers, and they start work with you, and suddenly, you need an extra pair of hands to help with, drafting, whatever it might be. Advocate can be fantastic at sort of picking up a case and exposing them to sort of an area of law that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily sort of have in your practice already. So that's fantastic. I think if you want to, as a chambers, make sure that your counsel is getting involved in multiple practice areas. Do pick up on Advocate's cases because they do have that opportunity there for you. And similarly at QC level, again, potentially a little bit harder to sell in to QCs who've obviously established their practices and things. But I do think sometimes you might have a QC who has got a particularly niche area of experience, and you go through Advocate's cases and you can find areas that, they might have worked on a case for a couple of months and focus on a really, really specialist area of law. And actually someone has come to Advocate and has got that similar issue, and it won't take much of their time. They're very experienced in the area, and actually sort of an hour or two, just some advice, whether it's a quick call or whatever, can be really beneficial. So definitely branch out practice areas is a massive benefit. Secondly, sort of career development. I think some of Advocate's cases can be very challenging and complex cases, things that potentially people wouldn't have access to every single day, particularly sort of junior end. We found barristers rocketed into the Court of Appeal or the Employment Appeals Tribunal very early on in their career, which actually, in terms of advocacy enhancement, has been fantastic. Again, back to sort of juniors and involved in bigger cases, I think a handful of sort of longer led cases where they just haven't had that opportunity to dive into court because they're trying to meet the deadlines of their more seniors, the solicitors, whatever it might be. Just padding out their practice with the smaller advocacy opportunities is definitely fantastic. And then sort of QC level, I think, again, not just focusing on juniors, but relying on pro bono cases for those service application forms. We've certainly seen it just, at Blackstone alone, that diversity in practice category that is so important these days. Pro bono work really helps people to sort of home in and show that they, dedicated their time to helping people who might not otherwise have access to sort of paid legal services, listing it in their competencies, and also referring to the judiciary and referees. We've had several people actually who have used, employment appeals judges or whatever it might be on their application forms off the back of pro bono cases. And so that's definitely a massive, massive perk. And then I think onto sort of client contact experience that you gain, I think certainly for us, where we do not really do much direct access work at all, actually, we've only got one barrister that accepts that area of cases. I do think it's very important to have that one-on-one experience of meeting a client in person, just that initial conversation, taking on board what they say, taking it in, and just dealing with them alone without the fallback of your solicitor is a fantastic experience, because despite solicitor involvement in private cases that we take on, you do have those witness meetings and things where, although there's someone there, you might not necessarily have them as a fallback and you're taking the lead, and just that one-to-one interaction is really important. I think drawing on relationship and moving away from sort of individual career goals, I think one of the most important things, if you speak to our barristers, one thing that they really take away from pro bono work is the fact that you've helped someone at their most desperate time. We've had several cases. One example is actually through Advocate, and I attended a drinks reception not that long ago, a couple of years ago now, pre-COVID. And we were just chatting with the junior barrister about one client they had in their base that had been there for 3 months or so and really, really desperate for some legal assistance. And, the barrister very helpfully said, you know what, yeah, I can do that. I've got a window availability tomorrow. I can at least have a look at the case. And the amount of gratitude that the client showed when we got in touch, before they'd even picked up their pen or considered the legal case, just having someone there with that knowledge, I think was just, made the world of difference. So, if it isn't just for your practice and what it's going to do for your counsel's practice, just job satisfaction, you can really be boosted through pro bono work. And no matter how big or small the case is, sometimes it's just a couple of hours on the telephone or some discreet advice. We've had counsel sort of in the lead up to a bigger hearing, and it's very daunting for a litigant in person to go into a 6-day trial and not be represented, but sometimes just a phone call for 10-15 minutes to run through a complex legal point or whatever it might be, we found has been really, really helpful. So I think basically it's really important to get involved at that level, but also really important to take Advocate up on this opportunity to work as a case reviewer. So you don't just have to sort of take on that client-facing work. As a case reviewer, you basically filter through cases, like I'm sure you're aware, and just find those ones that are the most in need of assistance or really, really require sort of the most deserving of pro bono assistance. So several of our QCs actually get involved with the volunteer scheme on that respect. And we found not only is it helpful for Advocate, but it's also really helpful for sort of judicial applications. Not trying to push counsel to the bench or anything, but if it's, just sitting as a recorder or anything to do with sort of the judicial mediator, arbitrator sort of experience, panels have been really, really interested in review work. So that's another sort of aspect that I think is sort of a selling point for barristers as such. Moving on to selling work into barristers, I think generally as a chambers, we're very lucky that our counsel are very receptive to pro bono work. Despite some crazy diaries at times, they are very keen to incorporate it into their practice. But I think one of the most important things is to instill that importance of pro bono work in at the earliest opportunity. So as soon as they take tenancy and you have those discussions with your members and you sit down and talk about fixing and just general chambers policies, take half an hour to talk about pro bono work, sign them up to Advocate. It's available there. They might not take on work right away. They might, start with lead work and rather than taking it off in their own accord. But if they are open and visible to the cases that are there, sometimes, when they, a couple of months down the line, they have that availability, they might have a quick flick through the database, the casework, and find something that they can help with. So definitely sign them up from the get-go. And touching on case allocation, obviously we approach pro bono work like we would any private case. When the work hits our desk, we do our utmost best to try and find someone to assist. But obviously with Advocate and the case management there are so many cases, so you cannot help everybody. And sadly, you do have to turn some work away. But I think if you sit down with your counsel and just go through the Advocate's application form, there are so many tick boxes, you can really tailor that portal to your individual barrister. So rather than filtering through emails and emails amongst emails of work, you know, they might read a couple of lines and find something they can help, and they'll be more likely to jump at it than if they have to trawl through information. And as a clerks team, I think I'd probably recommend signing up to the Advocate mailing list on a weekly basis that will tailor work to your chambers. Just so that clerks, we have that, you know, ability to just filter through work and have a look ourselves, rather than just sort of relying on, you know, a call if something's really urgent and they need work, or whatever it might be. And in practice chats, you know, if you have a chat with your counsel and they have a particular desire to rocket into a certain area of law or to enhance their skills in a certain area, you can look out for those cases, and when they are available, you know, you can pick up the phone to them and approach them, rather than them suggest that they found something that they think is suitable. So yeah, I think generally selling it in chambers as well, take Advocate up on their opportunity to come into your chambers and speak to people, because, you know, on a couple of occasions, we've been very fortunate to have them sort of attend and give the success stories and just generally promote what they do to make sure everyone actually understands exactly what they do. Because I think a lot of people and councils are obviously aware of, you know, Advocate, but actually the scale of work that they do and the variety of work that they can offer is something that sometimes, you know, it's really worth hearing from the mouth of, you know, people involved in it every day. So yeah, I think that's it. Just make sure you try and expose people, you know, to people at Advocate. If they want to have a question, pick up the phone. Everyone's very helpful, and attempt it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. So we've all heard how that undertaking any pro bono activity gives us that warm, tingly feeling inside, doing good for others, which is true. And to try and put a slightly more, I suppose, more mercenary barrister's clerk perspective on things is what I want to share with you, as to how undertaking these pro bono activities, especially in the context of the work that we do, is the gift that helps fulfill the needs of your chambers, your barristers, and very selfishly, you and your career as a barrister's clerk. That need, that pro bono activity can help satisfy is that need for growth and contribution. And just before we started, I was speaking to Paul Harris, the senior clerk here at One Garden Court, just chewing things over. And Paul said, well, the thing with pro bono is, you know, other than perhaps Blackstone Chambers, who else is being paid in the Supreme Court? And I think that's you know, quite telling. So many cases get to that level in the tribunal system that so many people are doing worthy sort of pro bono work in that regard. So what I'm about to share with you and talk about is has in some part already been covered by Nick and Sophie, and I'll reinforce everything that they've said, because you know, we've all been involved in this area of practice for, you know, a number of years. But what I hope I can show, particularly the barristers clerks looking after counsel's diary, is a change in perspective where you will approach pro bono work as a tool that will add value to your chambers, your barristers, and your own career. So first, looking at chambers and your individual barristers, you know, the great value of undertaking pro bono cases cannot be overstated, and is well known, and we've heard already. You know, there's huge value in it. It benefits the more junior members in gaining experience of cases, which they may otherwise be waiting years to develop those opportunities to get instructed on those matters. But increasingly, even at a senior level, where you've got a member of chambers who wants to either refocus their practice, or the term Sophie uses, rocket into a different area of practice, you know, it can present those opportunities to get that experience and build some credibility. Or even just to further tighten your focus for your barrister as a specialist in a very niche area of law. If those opportunities come up, it's another case, another experience, particularly if it gets reported and you know, makes the headlines. Those opportunities are there to be had if you're willing to look for them. Then there's the value of having breadth of pro bono work on your CV for silk and judicial applications, which we've spoken about. This also enriches those applications for further progression and the longer term careers of your barristers, which as a barrister's clerk, you're playing a part in finding these opportunities. Your barristers can use pro bono cases as excellent evidence as examples of required competencies for both judicial and silk applications, particularly for barristers whose usual practice might be based largely around advisory work only or just negotiating. I've heard of occasions where on feedback on successful silk applications, the council just hasn't had the advocacy experience in recent years. And that's where they're falling down on their application, particularly for silk. And again, these are potential opportunities for those advocacy experiences to enhance those applications. So it's not just the juniors, it's your more senior people who are at the top level who can sometimes benefit from these opportunities. Equally, in some specialist areas of practice, it's very difficult for very junior pupils and junior tenants for the first few years of practice to get any real advocacy experience, depending on the type of work they do and the set they're in. Undertaking pro bono cases will give those juniors some very much needed advocacy experience, some miles on the clock, which will stand them in good stead further on down the line. So from both a chambers and a clerking perspective, pro bono is good for business. Being able to demonstrate, as Nick says, your credentials of being good people to deal with from a corporate social responsibility perspective is good for chambers in the eyes of your clients. The bar, at the end of the day, is a people business, and at the end of the day, people buy people. So if you're showing you're aligned with your clients and their values, even the big firms, as we know Nick said, have departments just undertaking pro bono activity. If you're aligning yourself with them, they're going to be more receptive to any approaches you make in terms of developing those relationships further. So I'll just have I brought my own Yorkshire tap water. Trust this southern stuff. So how as a clerk do you use pro bono as a tool to develop yourself? For clerking, or certainly the parts of the job we call business development, I've found personally that it's been a great way of being introduced and become known by who to me were high value solicitor targets, people who would only had aspirations of working with normally because they'd be on maybe the respondent side of some of the cases where we were wanting to develop our profile and our chambers brand. And because they've been on the other side of cases which were taken on via advocate and pro bono. These solicitors who sometimes, even though they're a high value target for you, they wouldn't necessarily be receptive to a cold calling approach, an email, a phone call. But as soon as you've started working with them and making their lives easy on a pro bono case where previously the litigant they're acting against is unrepresented, it suddenly makes their world a whole lot easier if they've got counsel involved. And I've had on several occasions the appreciation, shall we say, from those solicitors and the assistants by being on the other side has been very well received. And equally, the judges will tell you that having all parties represented by professionals on a case make up the wheels of justice turn that little bit more smoothly. And again, the judges are very appreciative and can in some instances provide that judicial reference you may need where you've smoothed things on difficult matters, and particularly with litigants who were previously litigants in person. For me, it ties in a lot to practice development meetings I have with my members. You've got to sit down, as many people will often do, is sit with your barristers. We're there as clerks to help advise them on their practice and long-term career wherever possible. And I always have in mind seeking ways for them in which they can engage and share the experience they have as lawyers, as barristers, as advocates, as litigators, and those experiences and insights, and add that value, perhaps elsewhere in a different context. They can bring their experience in their field of expertise to the wider environment. And quite often this is in the form of pro bono activity. So that's something I always look for, those different opportunities that perhaps the barrister themselves wouldn't have thought of, adding their experience to doing good. And for junior clerks, this is a skill that you develop into with experience. Junior clerks, you start off and you're just looking to fill the diary. You're just looking to maximise counsel's income for that week, for that day, for that month. And I think as you get more senior, your perception changes and shifts, and you get to see the bigger picture where these opportunities can actually add greater value than that day-to-day practice of earning, £1,000, £2,000 for a day. There's a greater benefit to be had. And I think that only comes with experience and having that slightly different, more, dare I say, more mature perspective on the value of opportunities for your members. So pro bono will help you as a junior clerk if you're looking for these opportunities and bringing them to your chambers and to your individual barristers, can actually add a lot of credibility to your standing within chambers, because you're seen to be a bit more forward thinking, and that will only help in terms of promotion and developing yourself. Where am I up to? Pro bono can even bizarrely help in respect of well-being, another buzzword at the moment, and how you marry well-being with pro bono. Well, here's my take on it. That there might be a case that jumps out at you, which just from the knowledge you have of your member, you might be they're the person for this case because of their prior experience or previous knowledge. And it may be slightly away from their normal day-to-day practice, but there could be something interesting, a little bit quirky about it. And these cases can just be the tonic sometimes, and a change is as good as the rest, as they say. So on a well-being perspective, there might be opportunities if you're open to them that can actually tick a bit of a well-being box as well as CSR and everything else. So what can you or should you do as a clerk? When the regular emails come through from Advocate and they're distributed to chambers, I take a moment to cast an eye over the list of available cases, and if there's something of note, perhaps requiring a specific skill or expertise or something that I'm on the lookout for, based on my knowledge and experience of members from practice development meetings and having that sort of intimate knowledge of their goals and what we're trying to achieve with them in their career. If there's something of interest and it ticks the boxes, I'll check the diary. I'll see if they're available, if they're not, somebody else's who may also benefit from that same sort of exposure or experience, and then we'll just take it from there. And for some members, there's still an aversion to doing something for nothing. Then this is where, as a clerk, you need to start using the dark arts or the Jedi mind tricks, as we all from time to time use to get what we want, and we try and make the barrister or explain to the barrister that's in their long-term career best interests to perhaps undertake this opportunity. And again, it's a job of selling that job to your barristers and getting them to see the benefit for them in the long term. In exactly the same way as it would be if it's a paid case. It's detaching yourself from that perception of doing work for free, which is very short term, to a much more longer term perspective of opportunities. So very simply, treat these emails from Advocate as a list of potential available cases for your barristers, almost as if that email has come from your best firm solicitors, and each case on there is marked with £1 million briefing. Try and approach it with that kind of mindset, and see where, if it is the right case, you've got the right person, and don't just dismiss these opportunities. It only takes a few minutes a week, and there can be huge value. There's gold dust in those emails. Not necessarily everyone, but a lot of them, there are gold dust for your members, which, if you can get everything to line up and you end up doing it, it benefits chambers, it benefits your member, and it benefits your standing within chambers and within in your members' eyes. Can you not afford to take 5 minutes once a week to not properly take a look at what is potentially, low-hanging fruit? How much time do we spend chasing that 1 or 2 case opportunity? How much investment of time and money do we position ourselves to go after that paid job, when there are these similar CV career building opportunities that we can quite easily grab? And it's 5 minutes once a week, go through the list of cases, apply what you know about your barristers to that list and see that low-hanging fruit. Now, I've spoken a lot there about to advocate. You can also be proactive in other sources of pro bono work and pro bono opportunities, which are out there. Advocate are obviously an organisation that many of us know, but there are many other schemes which may sit closer to the opportunities which you're looking for. There is Pro Bono Connect, which Nick's already mentioned. I'm signed up to that. I'd encourage all of you who want to do this work, or at least look at the opportunities that are out there, to sign up to Pro Bono Connect and get their weekly or fortnightly emails. They have cases where you're working as a team. You've got solicitors, you've got all the big firms that signed up to Pro Bono Connect. If you're looking at building relationships with the big firms, Pro Bono Connect is another good way of doing it, where you're working with them, and those relationships are very much valued between the firms on the Pro Bono Connect panel. Additionally, there are many other schemes which Nick's mentioned, and if you look at the Advocates website, there's a page of links to all of them, or many of them, and they all represent different sectors of practice. These schemes cover chancery work, commercial, insolvency, employment, just to name but a few. All the links are on Advocates website to the different specialist schemes, and maybe the chambers you're at and your barristers are doing something a little bit more niche, a little bit more specific. There will be a scheme out there that you can sign up to. You can also sign or seek to align your chambers with other charitable groups close to your chosen areas of specialism of your members and your chambers. For instance, for my chambers, we look at organisations involving children and vulnerable adults. There are core areas of practice. We offer occasional support and assistance to children's organisations, women's refugees, care leavers organisations, to name but a few. But equally, I think sometimes to be ahead of the curve on some things, think about those interested parties that may get joined into the cases that you do as interveners, where there's a point of public principle or of significant importance. There are groups that get or seek party status on cases that quite often will need pro bono help from the bar. If that's your field of expertise and you've got the people, look at these organisations that are interveners in the cases that you do. Make yourself known. They're always looking for help. And you can be quite specific by who you approach as per your chamber's profile. And those intervener cases are nearly always going to end up being reported, and that's why they're being intervened by organisations. Just reach out to them. Another opportunity for clerks and chambers is to create your own networks for pro bono activity, or at least get involved at a high level with organisations that are aligned with your chamber's values and your business plan. We've recently become the Yorkshire and North Eastern Circuit arm of Temple Legal Centre, which is based in the Temple. And we provide, well, on a rotation, once a month, one of our members does a 2-hour legal advice clinic. On rotation with London and Liverpool and Leeds, we sort of rotate about once a month. This Temple Legal Centre provide just family law advice for free once a month, and we've recently become involved since the start of the summer, and it works very well. Again, putting my mercenary clerking hat on, you know, for me as a clerk, that gives me potential opportunities of being able to signpost clients in the local area to local solicitor client firms. Through that, we're just giving that initial advice and signposting, and those clients may be signposted to advocate or wherever else. If they may be entitled for legal aid, we'll signpost them potentially to local firms. That's good for business. That's just going to reinforce my relationships with my local firms. But it's just applying that kind of thinking. Where can I get these situations to benefit chambers, benefit me as a clerk and my members? It really is a win-win if you sit down and think about it. Look for opportunities on individual levels with your members. I had a recent practice development meeting with one of my juniors, and I was encouraging, as I try and do, always have an angle. Where can you do something more than just the day job? It enriches practice, it enriches well-being and everything else. Where can you take that skill and knowledge you have and apply it somewhere closer to home? And this chap I was speaking to is obviously a family specialist. He's a die-hard cricket fan, plays it, watches it. And I suggested to him, why doesn't he look at seeing where he could apply his family law experience in that context? And he looked at me like I was daft. I said, well, there's child safeguarding policies at a club level. Is there an angle there where you could go and assist your local club, or at a county level? There's issues that affect other organisations, which, unless you sit down and think about it, people always like that bit of help, and it could turn into something magnificent for him. If he gets involved, it could turn into nothing. But unless you try, you're not going to actually find these opportunities of deploying that expertise and skill in another area. So hopefully, fingers crossed, he's gone off very excited about potentially sharing his expertise in child protection law in a cricket sort of context, and we'll see where that goes. But it really is, once you change your perception of what value that you can gain from any pro bono activity, and it's not just dealing with court cases. There are so many charitable organisations that need the help of the bar and the skill and experience and expertise. If we all did that bit more, I think the world would just turn a little easier. So if you look for these opportunities, there is an abundance to be had. So in summary, in engaging with any pro bono activity, whether via Advocate or any of the other agencies which I've mentioned, or any other organisations, pro bono work enhances Chambers' profile and will get you introductions to clients that you seek, people by people. It will help your members with longer term career path for your barristers. It can gain you valuable advocacy experience for your pupils, juniors, and even more senior people who might need that experience. And it shows that you as a clerk can have a good perception of meeting the needs of your chambers, its members, which will in turn lead to further enhancement of your role and status in chambers and your own future prospects. And if all that fails, don't forget it also gives you that warm, tingly feeling inside. Thank you. I think we just need to open the floor to any questions, either in person or online. If anybody online has any questions, if you want to post them on the Q&A box, we will hopefully be able to answer any questions. While people are tapping away, are there any questions in the room? Speechless. I think that just goes to show we comprehensively covered everything.
Yeah.
And at the moment, we've no questions coming from online. I'll just give that another second, and if there are no other questions, we'll move adjourn, as they say. Okay, well, thank you all for your
Thank
time.
you very much.
I hope you found it useful and you've taken away some tips from at least one of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.